In today's video, I'm going to be comparing the Hoka Mach X with the Brooks Hyperion Max. Now, these are two shoes that are kind of meant for the same thing. They're designed to be an up-tempo trainer, possibly used as a race shoe, without actually being a race shoe. Now, the Mach X and the Hyperion Max have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. Let's get into it. First of all, a couple disclosures. Hoka was good enough to send me the Mach X for the purpose of review, and Roadrunner Sports was good enough to send me the Hyperion Max for the purpose of review. However, neither Roadrunner Sports nor Hoka are going to get to see this video before you do. Neither of them are paying me, and actually neither know that I am making this video right now. My individual reviews of both shoes are already published, so if you want to check out a deep dive into each of those shoes, check out those videos. Let's start off with price. Both of these shoes are a little on the expensive end of the spectrum when it comes to training shoes. The Hyperion Max will cost you $170. The Mach X will cost you $180. Now, I want to say that both fit true to size. However, in a Brooks, I wear a size 13, and in Hoka, I wear size 12.5. I'm not sure if it's just me. I know other people have said that Hoka fits true to size, but for me, I tend to have to go down a half size. As far as the Hyperion Max, size 13 is what I wear in most shoes. And just as an aside, in the Hoka Rocket X2, I do wear a size 13 in that shoe, but that's more of a race fit. So when I wore a size 12.5 in the Rocket X2, it was just a little tight. Now, according to Brooks, a US men's size 9 in the Hyperion Max will tip the scale at 7.8 ounces or 221 grams. However, in my size, remember US men's size 13, the Hyperion Max tips the scale at 9 ounces even or 255 grams. Pretty light. Extraordinarily light for me. Hoka says that a men's size 10 in the Mach X will tip the scale at 9.4 ounces or 266 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 12.5, it tips the scale at 11 ounces or 312 grams. So just so you're clear, the Hoka Mach X weighs a full 2 ounces more than the Brooks Hyperion Max. Take that for what it's worth. But obviously, the Brooks Hyperion Max is considerably lighter, and if that is something you put more value in, the Brooks Hyperion Max is going to be the one for you. The Brooks Hyperion Max has 34 millimeters in the heel, 26 millimeters in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. In the men's version of the Hoka Mach X, we have 37 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 5 millimeter drop. In the women's version of the Mach X, we have 42 in the heel, 37 in the forefoot, also for a 5 millimeter drop. So depending on what you like, 5 millimeters, 8 millimeter drop, that could be the deciding factor to you. The Brooks Hyperion Max uses a stretch woven upper, 3D printed overlays, and does not have a gusseted tongue. Now, the tongue on the Hyperion Max is quite thin, almost like a race day tongue. It does have some extra padding right down the middle, just to prevent that lace bite when you cinch it down. And right on the front of the tongue, we do have a full length lace loop. Now, you can see online that I've just got the laces going through the bottom of the lace loop. But if you wanted to, you could lace it through the entire lace loop. Not sure how well you can see that, but you can put the laces underneath it. Now, with that said, because it is not gusseted, I did notice a little bit of tongue migration when I took this out on my runs. It wasn't anything that bothered me. I never noticed it on the run, but when I came home and I went to take the shoe off, I did notice that sometimes the tongue had slipped to the side a little. The Hoka Mach X has a recycled Creole Jacquard upper. It is super comfortable and a little more traditional looking. The overlays are minimal. We have some branding on the lateral side, the little Hoka bird on the medial side, and then just to give the upper a little support on the Mach X, gosh, there's a little spider crawling on it. I just came in from my run using the Mach X in a second, so probably should have banged them off before I took them inside. But just to give the upper just a little support, we do have areas where the weave on the upper is just a little tighter, just to give it that little bit of structure. We do have an underlay coming around the toe box, and of course a little support along the eyelet chain, and the same thing with the Hyperion Max. We do have an underlay coming around the front just to keep the upper off your foot, and then again those 3D printed overlays right along the eyelet chain. As far as the heel collar goes, look at these. They are very similar in thickness, and actually very similar in feel. I've got no complaints. Both shoes had a lovely step-in feel, and they locked down well. Both the Hyperion Max and the Mach X have a very stout heel counter. Look at this. Look at this on the Hyperion Max. Can't press that down at all. Same story with the Mach X. Both shoes are using a heel counter of a similar thickness, of a similar stiffness, and I didn't experience any heel slip in either shoes. Let's come down to the midsole. Now, the Brooks Hyperion Max is using DNA Flash. DNA Flash is a nitrogen-infused foam, and this ultimately is where the weight savings is coming with the Hyperion Max. This DNA Flash is super light. Now, just to be clear, there is no plate in the Hyperion Max. This is just the foam. And if I hold it up, you can see the geometry. It's Brooks's rapid roll technology. That's the toe spring right here, and this little curve in the heel. It's just designed to give you super fast transitions. The Hoka Mach X is using a dual foam setup. We have PEBA foam on the top, we have a layer of EVA foam on the bottom. The PEBA foam is going to be nice and soft and super responsive, and the EVA foam on the bottom is going to give it a little bit of structure. Now, sandwiched between the PEBA and the EVA is a Pebax plate. Now, at this point, you may be thinking, Matt, why are you comparing a plated shoe with a non-plated shoe? Well, guys, the Pebax plate in the Hoka Mark X is not like a carbon fiber plate. It's not even like other plates in other training shoes that really give it a stiff ride. Look at this. I can bend this up. I can bend this up quite well, especially considering this is a plated shoe. The same thing goes with the Hyperion Max. Now, admittedly, this is a little easier to bend, but not by much. The Hoka Mark X, even though it does have that Pebax plate, is still a remarkably flexible shoe, and that presents nicely on the run. We're going to talk about ride in just a second. The Hoka Mark X has a Durabrasion outsole rubber. You can see we've got lots of coverage on the forefoot, a nice amount of coverage on the heel, and of course this little cutout right here in the middle where you can see the Pebax plate. The Brooks Hyperion Max also has a good amount of rubber on the bottom, meaning both these shoes are going to stand up to a lot of wear. We've also got a fair bit of rubber here on the heel. And actually, at the making of this video, I've got well over 100 miles in the Hyperion Max, and I've got about 65 miles in the Mark X. And to be honest, the rubber on the Mark X is showing more wear than the Hyperion Max. However, it does look like there is more rubber on the Mark X than there is on the Hyperion Max. But still, it does say something that I am seeing more rubber wear on my lateral heel area on the Mark X than I am on the Hyperion Max. Okay. Let's talk about ride. Because when you get two shoes that are fairly similar in a lot of ways, and there are some differences that might make you think that you want one shoe over the other. Well, first of all, let me say that if you are a Hoka person or you are a Brooks person, your choice is already made up. The differences are not big enough for you to jump ship if you are committed to one of these brands. These shoes do feel remarkably similar when you're running in them. Now, as far as the actual ride goes, the Brooks Hyperion Max does ride slightly firmer than the Hoka Mark X. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, both of these shoes are kind of marketed towards the up-tempo range of our runs. And that's true. Both of these shoes feel better when you pick up the pace. However, I have used both of these shoes kind of like very expensive daily trainers. And for me at least, they work for all paces and they work well. I haven't found the Brooks Hyperion Max to be too firm to not take it out for my easy runs or even my long runs. I think the Pebax plate in the Hoka Mark X is just the right amount of stiffness where I'm not getting any plate fatigue. So in this instance, if you're not a fan of running with plates or you don't want another shoe with a plate, I think you should put that opinion aside if you're thinking about the Hoka Mark X, because the plate in the Hoka Mark X is not like plates in other shoes. And I think it rides very similar to the Hyperion Max, despite the Hyperion Max not having a plate. Now, when it comes to comfort on the run, I'm going to give that one to the Hoka Mark X. I think this is a remarkably comfortable shoe at all paces. As I already said, both shoes, they pick up the pace very well. They really come alive when you pick up the pace. However, if you want road feel, if you want to feel the miles that you're putting in, or when you're picking up the pace, if you want to feel that speed a little more, the Hyperion Max is going to be the shoe to go with. Look, the Hyperion Max just has 3 millimeters less in the heel and 6 millimeters less in the forefoot than the Mark X, and yet it's a world of difference. The Mark X is a shoe that you'll put on when you just want to embrace the comfort, the ride, and if you're going to take it out for a long time and you just want to kind of set it and forget it. I think the Hyperion Max is a little more engaged with the runner. It sounds a little too much like hype speak, but I feel the road a lot more in the Hyperion Max than I do in the Mark X. But on the other side of the coin, I don't feel the road so much that I feel beat up when I'm wearing the Hyperion Max. The Hyperion Max is definitely protective enough for you to go out and run your long runs. And ultimately, I think the Hyperion Max is a little more, I don't know, traditional, a traditional feeling shoe, you know what I mean? Whereas the Mark X, it utilizes just a lot of different technologies with the dual foam, the Pebax plate, and that tends to separate the road from the runner. So I want to hear from you. Which shoe would you go with and why? Look, I already know a lot of you are going to go with the Brooks Hyperion Max just because of the weight difference. 2 ounces less than the Hoka Mark X is not nothing. But if I'm completely honest, now let me preface that I haven't run marathons in these shoes. I have just used these shoes for training runs. But in my training runs, when I've taken them out on long easy runs, when I've taken them out on intervals, when I've taken them out on tempo runs, for the hour or two that I have put into these shoes at a time, the weight difference, so the lighter Hyperion Max, is not noticeable to me when I'm running. Of course, that could change when you're running at race pace or you're running for an extended amount of time. But for some of you, that's not going to matter. The numbers are what matters. And 7.8 ounces for a US men's size 9, that's a pretty light shoe. Also, the Hyperion Max is $10 less than the Mark X. I don't know. Guys, look, I've had the Hyperion Max for about 5 months. I have had the Mark X for about a month. And at this point, I find myself grabbing the Mark X more than pretty much any of my other shoes at the moment. It's a solid trainer. But since I got the Hyperion Max, this has definitely been on my shortlist for a shoe of the year in 2023. So at this point in the video, I'd like to make a recommendation, but I think the numbers, the data, the stats, my description of how these shoes feel on the run, I think they've made that decision for you. Let me know what that decision is. And of course, I will place links to both of these shoes from Roadrunner Sports in the comments below. And just so you know, they will be affiliate links. And when you buy through my affiliate links, you never pay any more. I just get a very small commission, which helps support the channel. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Brooks Hyperion Max and the Hoka Mark X. Be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.